Toastmasters Interact. It's for profit.
Hello, fellow Toastmasters. This is the fourth Monday of the month. Welcome to Corporate Leadership Network. If this is your first time here, my name is Maud Nale. I'm serving as the Corporate Relations Manager in this Toastmasters year. This is the Corporate Leadership Network. If you're hearing about it for the first time, we're a forum for leaders from corporate clubs. In this community, we share ideas, we brainstorm, we problem solve, and most importantly, we network, because we understand that the challenges that we're going through as a corporate club are quite unique to us. And so this forum has been created for us to come together, share our challenges, but most importantly, find solutions to our problems. We've discussed a lot here on Corporate Leadership Network. When the program started, we spoke about how Toastmasters can benefit you in your professional life. Karen Levi-Strauss, a distinguished Toastmaster, took us through the different ways that Toastmasters can benefit us in our personal life, but most importantly in our professional life. That session was followed by one entitled Creating Wow Learning and Development Sessions. It was led by a distinguished Toastmaster, who is also our program quality director, Andrew Turo, and he spoke about the different ways that we as corporate clubs can go about creating value for our members through the Toastmasters program. We then went on to discuss how do we convert, or how do we get our colleagues to come to our sessions as guests. And then the session was led by Frank Turo, or the one that followed, about how do you now take your colleagues who are come as guests and how do we convert them to members. Frank shared some amazing ideas of how to go about that process, bearing in mind that it's different in every single organization and in every single corporate club. And then Ed Moore, for the past month, took us through, now that our guests our members and our colleagues who are in the program, how do we keep them engaged? And one of the main ways that we can do that in Toastmasters is through a mentorship program. He explained the benefits of the mentorship program. We even had a standalone session where we showed clubs how to set up the mentorship program at their club. If all of this is news to you and you're hearing it for the first time, worry not. It's all available on our YouTube channel, Toastmasters Southern Africa District 74. Click on the playlist that has been called Corporate Leadership Network, and all the sessions that we've hosted thus far have been there. This month's session is going to be a very interesting one. They say a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. This is a very well-known proverb that speaks about the things that you have being more valuable than something that you may get. We've turned that well-known proverb around and we've said a member in hand is worth two in the bush, which means it is more valuable to keep your current member than it is to get any more members, or even one or two more members. But we know that this is a challenge, not only at corporate clubs, but across Southern Africa and the world. How do we keep our members engaged so that we keep them in Toastmasters? I'm very excited about today's session. I'm going to introduce our facilitator tonight or today. He is a strategist and business analyst. He has skills in the areas of strategic analysis, reporting, and advisory, organizational structure design, human capital capacity development, and mentorship. And a very important thing that I must mention, he is a distinguished Toastmaster, but he's also had this role that I have now in previous Toastmasters years. He was a corporate support coordinator, so I thought he must be very well attuned to be able to speak to us on this topic, having dealt with corporate clubs in the past. He is a distinguished Toastmaster, as I mentioned. Please join me in welcoming onto the virtual stage distinguished Toastmaster Lazola Bele, who will be speaking on the topic, A Member in Hand is worth two in the bush. Lazola, the virtual stage is yours.
Wow, what an introduction. I hope I'm audible and I'm clear. Can everyone hear me? So someone give me an indication that you can hear me loud and clear.
Loud and clear, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for allowing me to engage you today. And thank you, Maud, for the invitation. I think as I discussed with Maud, we're going to try and make this as a discussion. So what will happen is that as far as possible, and of course, if you've got the bandwidth, I'll need you to switch on your video and just engage, because it's very difficult to engage icons, which is what I'm engaging right now. And that's perhaps one of the key problems that we are now facing in corporate, as well as Toastmasters in the post-COVID time, is that a lot of what has happened is we've moved from talking to people and getting excited by the beautiful faces to talking to icons. And not only is this a Toastmaster problem, it's across the business. Every day we're talking to screens, and those screens have icons. And I'm like, whoa, I just spent the whole day today talking to icons. And how exciting would it be to go into a Toastmaster session and speak to more icons? So just before we get started, can I get some video? Just want to see some faces, just see if there's people on the other end. Of course, if you are naked, it's okay. Don't switch on your video. But if you can, let's just have a quick look. Who's in the room? Let's get some videos going. Please, don't make me come there. Only more video is on. Right, another video coming up. Awesome stuff. There we go, Noel. Right. Valentine, you are unmuted, so I think you are looking for the video button. It's just next to the mute button. All right, there we go. There's Mark. It has been 2 years, guys, since we came to this world. So by now, you should know where the video button is. You should know. If you don't, I think your corporate needs to talk to you just about training and development, right? All right, I see Otis, but it's a blank screen, but I see you try to switch on your video. Maybe something wrong with the camera. Oh, there we go. Beautiful faces all around. All right, so the rest of us are just refusing to switch on the video. Okay. All right, let's talk a bit about a few things. So I wanted to share a short story with you. And the interesting thing about the story is that, you know, way before I started dealing with corporates and Toastmasters, I worked for a company called Accenture. And while I worked there, I was a member of a different club and I was involved with different things. And at the time, I had just finished off being an area director. And after that, I said, no, I don't actually, no, actually, I was a president and I refused to be an area director. So I said, nah, it's fine. I just need more time in my hands and things of that nature. And so I didn't take up any roles. And then one day, I realized that I now have too much time on my hand and I need something to do. At the time, I think it was Aletta reached out to me and says a couple of clubs that need coaching. And then I saw Accenture on the list. It was the Woodmead Club. And I thought, oh, okay, I'm generally in that vicinity anyway. So let me take up the role to coach this club. And just like how I normally do things, I just ran there with no plan and didn't know what it means to coach a club. But what I knew for sure was that I have to be present. So when I walked in there and I tried to figure out how to coach this club, I then did some reading to say, what are the coaching process, what needs to happen? But when I walked into the club, there was only one member left. Exactly one member left. And that one member was the treasurer. And the reason that member stuck around is because she had money in the bank that belonged to the club and she didn't know what to do with it because she also wanted to go, right? So jokingly, I said, look, if no one wants this club and there's all this money, let's split the cash and let's dash, right? We had a good laugh. And then I asked her one simple question. I said, as the only remaining member of this club, as things stand, do you want the club or not? And that's an important question because we don't save clubs that no one wants. We don't work on clubs that no one wants, right? So if she had said no, she doesn't want the club, I would simply say, well, let's close the club and let's call it a day and let's keep it moving. And so she said, no, I want the club. Then we sat down and said, right, now let's figure out what needs to happen for this club to turn around. The first question we have to answer is, besides you, who else would want this club? And as we answered that question, we started answering, what are the dynamics that are facing this particular corporate club? And that's the thing that you have to know very specifically. Corporate clubs are different. This particular one, what was the dynamics around it? So one of the first things we found was that a lot of time, it has a huge intake of graduates, beginning of the year, and then they're there because they just got employed, and then the company says, yes, there's a program you can do. And so they all flock that program. And as they find their footing and they get involved in projects, consulting firms, so they go off-site, they kind of realize no one can make them do things anymore. So they just disappear. The other group of people was that if I'm part of this Toastmasters thing and I saw someone important there, then there's an association, a positive association, and it being a consulting firm, it was important to have that positive association. And so they joined. And same thing, as people got what they wanted, they sort of disappeared. And so this was an important thing for us to understand why people join. And it led us to one critical understanding that this club will continuously churn as years go because the nature of the company means that sometimes people aren't on site or close enough to be able to attend. But at the same time, it also means that someone is trying to get the next promotion. They need to create a case for themselves. And this is one of the things that creates that perspective that they can put forward. And when they get that right, they move on. And we have to accept that. Now, if you juxtapose that to what Toastmasters is asking for us, Toastmasters is saying, hey, your club at 40 members, you know, we need to retain them for the next year and all of that. And that's important because you don't want to go out and look for new members all the time. But in that, we sometimes forget that sometimes members have gotten what they need from the program at the time. And if we understand their needs and they don't need to be there anymore, then we could say, okay, I understand. You can now move on. You have achieved your goal. But I think one of the key things that we learned from that exercise, Mayuri and I, was that every time we ascend, on a leadership exercise, whether it's leading a club, whether it's leading a family, whether it's leading a department, whether it's leading anything in your life, it has to be a challenge, a positive challenge to you. Because if you are doing it for the sake of it's renewal time, I need 20 members because 20 members is what is required by Toastmasters, then you're not going to enjoy it as the challenges come. Here's one other fascinating thing. About, I think it was 2015, I read a book called The Story of Toastmasters. And it was written by a gentleman called Ralph C. Smedley. I think some of you might have heard of him. And so he documents this entire journey of where Toastmasters started in 19 whatever, and then how it progressed. One of the things that I observed from that was that at the time of reading, which was around 2015, we were experiencing the same problems that they experienced in 1940. So I said to myself, well, hang on, how can we take this long to solve the same thing? And then as I asked that question, I also then realized that the challenge here is that we need to create opportunities for people to grow. So every year we change leadership, and every time we do that, we reopen the gap. The challenge is that most people don't see that as a learning opportunity. They see that as, things should just work, because the opposite is that in corporate culture, we want to have sustainable leadership so that things are sort of maintained over a long period of time. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. But from a Toastmaster point of view, we need to create enough opportunities for challenges so that every leader who ascends to a position has an opportunity to effect something and, in essence, gain something for themselves. So one of the key things is that corporates should be your challenge to try and do something different. And so when we talk about membership and how to retain that, I want us to think about a few things, right? And so this is where the discussion is going to start. First, I just want to get some insight as to what actually works in your corporate club. I'll get some volunteers. If there's no volunteers, I will just call out people by name, and that's even more nerve-wracking because you don't know if you're about to speak. And we just want to see if something must work and say, hey, in our club, actually, this actually works for us around membership, right? We'll get to what doesn't work. I just want to hear what does actually work. So do I have a volunteer, or should I just jump in there and call out your name? Cool, I'll start on the top of my screen, and I've got Mark. You're at the top of my screen. If you could just tell me which corporate you're part of, and then what actually works. What do you think works for you as a club?
So I'm Mark Aitchison, the president of Westbank Toastmasters. So I think what works for us is, what worked before lockdown was we did a lot of advertising in the building that we actually worked in. Now, obviously, things changed with lockdown. We all now meeting and having our meetings virtually. So I've appointed somebody who, for public relations, who is actually quite versed in sort of the media within our group. It started within Westbank, but I have someone now, and it extends because you must realize we're part of a bigger financial group in First Rand. And I must say, the exco we got, I got a fantastic team. The unfortunate thing is that now they've all got work pressure, so a lot of them want to be members, but they don't want to carry on exco. But that's a whole nother discussion. But just to get back, we've advertised within the group, and the success that we have at meetings, if I can just give you an indication, 3 meetings when we extended it to the bigger group, we had, I think it was 106 participants at our meeting. So I've asked the guys to keep a record. The last 2 meetings, it's been on average about 60 people attending. So, and there's people that come in and drop off, but essentially we're looking at quite big groups. So I'm encouraged that we're going to increase our members. We have already now, we submitted our list, but there's a lot more that still want to join, but obviously to meet the timeline, we got that list sent up, and we'll probably have another list now. And yeah, we want to take advantage of that and recruit. So to just cut a long story short, I think if you're in an organization, you need to take advantage of what's available, and every big corporate should have some means to which they promote head office instructions, etc. And if you can get a foot in that, it's there. You can give yourselves a punt. And as I said, now that we've extended within the greater group, we have a larger audience, and it'll give our club depth, because I think now the experienced people, as I said, in the Exco who are under work pressure that want to step down. Before we had not as many members, but if we can increase our membership, you have that depth for people to take over. And I want to get to a point where people will be fighting to be on the Exco, and not where we've got huge members and no one to help run the club. So yeah, that's worked for us. As I said, my challenge now is to replace those good Exco members that, for no other reason other than work pressure, and a lot of them also, the company has asked them to study. They've got people doing BComs now, and obviously that has take priority in their life because it affects their career directly. So yeah, it is what it is, but that's worked for me.
Okay, thank you very much. You raised some very interesting things there, but I'll come back to that. Let me go to Monica. Monica, do you have something to add on your side? Things that work for you, or your club rather, not you personally, that you think, oh, this actually works? And I'm doing this so that we start to get some ideas, because it's important that we borrow from each other the items that work. We can't know the real answers to every question, but we could share some insights across. Monica?
Thank you very much. Well, let me start with what hasn't worked, and then I'll go to what worked.
What works? What works? I didn't ask what doesn't work. I said what works. It's important, because I'm trying to get us to remember that something.
Right. All right, that's fine. So I am Vice President Membership for Old Mutual Zimbabwe Toastmasters Club. So it's actually Old Mutual Harare, though we are the only club in Zimbabwe incorporating other regions. What has worked in the beginning, people were really excited about online meetings, and we were able to incorporate other members from various towns that are within Harare, from Bulawayo, Mutare, Masvingo, and then our membership grew to 41 members, and it worked perfectly well until I'll go to until, and our meetings were well attended. I wouldn't want to lie, they were well attended, and at times would have about 30 of our own club members attending meetings. And then I don't know then what happened. Somewhere along the road, people dropped interest, and then somebody suggested that maybe it's because your group is too big, and we are failing to give each and every member the value that they anticipated upon joining the club. So because we're too big, and when we call out for participation, it's always the same people volunteering, and we have been failing now to start to ignite the interest of the members that we lost along the way. Yes, so online worked for us. We're able to incorporate more people, but now it's biting us in the back, and we don't know what to do.
All right, thank you very much. Let me add 2 points, right? This is actually very, very important points that Mark and Monica have raised here. So one of the things that I've received already from different corporates as challenges members not motivated, obviously COVID after effects, things like job losses, financial constraints and that. Time, members saying that they're too busy. Renewals are an issue, but maybe that's linked to whether it's motivation or it's linked to affordability, access to internet and data. And the last one, they're saying members craving the human factor and personal contact. So one of the things is that obviously, if you have all those challenges in one club, it's important to pick which one you're going to solve and which one is going to have the highest impact. But just based on the two answers that I've gotten here, I just want to emphasize one thing. The first thing is that the first thing about retention is actually marketing. Retention, yes, you want to keep the members that you have, but you always have to admit to yourself that getting a consistent stream of guests and therefore a consistent stream of new members is the best form of keeping your numbers consistent. What it also does is that in the members that are in the club, when they see new people join, that variety keeps things interesting. There's nothing as interesting as CC1s. Every time there's a CC1, or rather the level 1, the first speech, it allows us all an opportunity to meet someone new, to see a different person. And if we consistently have new people doing their first speeches, the club itself becomes interesting, even more interesting for the older members. So I like what Mark was saying, that advertising to other corporates, if your club is an open corporate, to get people to join. Of course, the big challenge now is we are online, so the strategies of advertising would have to change, and that's what we need to figure out. How do you make sure that you're reaching other people around other corporates to then join your club, or at least visit in the first instance? The second thing then is what Monica mentions. Upside is that online can reach people that are otherwise in other towns. The downside is that now you can grow very quickly and then you don't know how to manage that. There's two things you have to always think about there. There's an optimal size that a club should be to allow for maximum participation. And in general, once a club grows beyond 40, you always have to think about multiplying the club, having 2 different clubs or 2 different sessions in the beginning so that everyone gets a chance to participate. One of the strategies you can apply there is the ExCo itself should be doubled, because the more the people are, the more you need more people to follow up. So have other roles and say, we're going to have 2 VPMs. One is just engaging new visitors. The other one is managing retention or the members that have been there for a long time. So you have to look at those kind of things there. The other thing is that if I go back to my Accenture story, back at that year, Accenture only had 1 club in Woodmead. And then because of the growth, we end up with 3 clubs, 1 in Woodmead, 1 was in Braamfontein, they had an office there, and 1 was in Centurion. But here's the thing that we also found out at the time. When you know about Toastmasters, it's easy to think that everyone knows about Toastmasters. But what we found out was that it's only through actually advertising, reaching out, that people were like, oh, wow, what is this? And they got interested. At the time, because it was pre-COVID times, we literally put up posters in the corridors, and people were starting to realize, what is this thing called Toastmasters? So we also have to do the same in this online environment and not take for granted that actually everyone knows that there's a thing such as a Toastmasters. So let's advertise a lot more. And the reason is because there is definitely some kind of fatigue with online meetings, not because of Toastmasters, but because everything else is online. So we do need to give people a break, but we also need to introduce more interesting things to people that they can actually do online, right? So very interesting things we could try there. So one of the things that I want us to also think about is, besides what I've mentioned in terms of the issues affecting clubs, what is affecting your club and how can we actually strategize to solve that? Does anyone want to share something that is specifically in their club? Then we can see how we chip in there to assist you think about how that type of problem can be approached. Do I have some volunteers or should I check on people? Right, let's go to Ashati. Ashati, can you hear us?
Good evening, Lazola. Can you repeat the question?
Share in your club if there's any specific challenges that you're facing, and then let's see how we can work on helping you think through that. And obviously tell us what your club is.
Our club, I'm the president of First Masters Club Botswana. What challenges are we facing as a club? I believe it is regarding meeting preparations, number one, where there's a clash of roles between VPM, VPE, VPR. I currently don't have a VPR. So that means I'm double rolling in that part. However, the challenge that we usually have is that clash between VPE, VPR, who does what, who prepares for a meeting, and also what do you call it? Members onboarding and retention, because we are all relatively new on the ExCo. Like 80% we are new on the roles of ExCo. We are very new in Toastmasters also. Thank you.
Right, cool, awesome stuff. Thank you very much. I think the issue there maybe to address that is because you are new. I don't know if you, obviously I don't know when your club was launched. I don't know if you had an opportunity to attend the club officer training, because it does sound like there is some clarity issues around roles there, so something that's normally addressed there. In the interim, I think if you reach out to your area director or division director to say, hey, we need a little bit of training in terms of the roles for our club, and then I'm sure they've got a coordinator that can assist you in addressing that gap. Because I think that one, in terms of who does what, is pretty well defined in terms of the Toastmasters material. What can be a challenge sometimes is knowing where to find that particular material. So just reach out there, and I'm sure even if you go via Maud, she can point you to the right person in terms of context, and then that can be very easily addressed. Then secondly, the issue of onboarding. So another thing that happens, and I've seen it over the years, is that especially for new people joining Toastmasters, is to think, well, we're new to Toastmasters, how are things supposed to be done? Which is the right question, because you are coming into an organization. But I want to challenge all of you now as leaders of your clubs to think of it differently. To say, if I'm new to Toastmasters and I'm seeing the challenges, how do I think this should be addressed? Right? So if you were successfully inducted when you came in, you want to take stock of that, or if no induction has happened, you then take precedent and say, hey, I want to create an induction process here that makes it easy for other people to come in. Now you must understand, I didn't say look at how Toastmasters done it. I said think about how you think should be done. And this is important because there's obviously material within Toastmasters that tells us how to do these particular items like induction and all of that. But it's also quite generic. And so sometimes it does not account for your personal or your club's circumstances and dynamics that will actually work. And so working backwards and saying, let me put together an onboarding pack that helps new members get comfortable into our club. Then once it's there and we think, or we see it working, let's compare it to the Toastmasters recommended one, and then let's see how far it is. In most cases, it's not far, because in principle, you would be on the same journey. But what you'll find are the gaps that you've then addressed as a club to deal with your own specific dynamics. Those items are what we need to be sharing as club, to say, look, this is what we've tried and it worked. Try that. And it allows us to build some personality into our clubs. It allows us to also account for our unique circumstances without necessarily deviating from the Toastmasters values, as it were. So what I would challenge you there is to really look at, here's a new member, what do they need to know to settle in? And you design an onboarding pack for them, obviously not for one member, but any other new member, and then watch if it works. And if it definitely does work, then keep it and share it with others. And you can also look at what material is available in Toastmasters, and what you'll probably find is not deviating a lot, because at the end of the day, Toastmasters is trying to assist people develop. And so as long as you're designing things that are helping your members develop, you'll probably find that they're in line with the values and the other material that's already available from a Toastmasters perspective. I hope that helps. Let me also mention that anyone who's on the call who wants to add to a particular solution or something that they've tried that works, you're welcome to do so. Remember, this is a conversation. One of the key things with solutioning the kind of issues we come across as corporate clubs and all of that is that there's no one person that can say, I've got all the answers, but it's to share our experiences, what has worked, what has not worked, what we've tried, and then we can allow others to maybe try different things and see if they work for themselves. Right? Cool. Can I invite someone else to share some challenges that they're facing that they would like to conversate?
Hi, Lazola. I thought I had sent out a survey to the leaders that are in the WhatsApp group. And I know you read it earlier, but I think it will be a great starting point for us as leaders also contemplate other challenges that they're experiencing. Because there were quite a few that have come through, and they're not unique to corporate clubs, but I think these are burning points where they're concerned. And let's go through some of them and provide solutions whilst the leaders think and add to the conversation. The first one was members not being motivated. Members not being motivated. How could we assist with members not being motivated?
Oh, that's a very key one. And one thing I just want to share there is that, I mean, again, this is not a unique to corporate. It's generally a Toastmaster thing. Is I'm sure you've heard this question of why. You always go back to the why. And in reality, all of us, over time, we lose motivation for a variety of reasons. And it's important from a leadership perspective that we've got a consistent process of asking our members, why did you join Toastmasters? And in reality, what you're trying to ascertain there is what reasons made you come here? And are those reasons still valid? If they are they being addressed? And if they are being addressed, are they being addressed successfully? The reason you want to constantly ask the question is because the why changes, or sometimes gets satisfied. Someone might say, I joined because I had this big presentation coming up at work, and someone said, look, go to Toastmasters, they can help you through that. So I joined the club and I did a few levels. I also practiced my presentation. I did my presentation. It was fantastic. And now I don't really need the club anymore, right? So once you understand that, then you understand that, okay, this person's need was met. You could, at that moment, offer other needs and say, look, there's other things you could do that could be of benefit to your career. But at the same time, it's important to understand that if they say, no, I've had enough, it's okay for them to then say, right, this is what I needed and I got it. And it's okay for us as leaders not to take that personally because we wanted them to stay. Right? So it's very important to ask, what is the why? And that's one of the key factors around motivation. Are you being serviced adequately still? Is your need being met or not? And if member says, look, it's not been met, we can then have a conversation with that member or those members to say, hey, what do we need to do at the club to meet these members' needs? It's quite easy for us to think that everyone requires the same thing from Toastmasters. And sometimes it's because the program that we we follow is the same. So we think it's satisfying all their needs. The upside with the new pathways program is that it does allow different paths. So someone can very easily say, this is where I want to be channeled, and then makes it easier for us as leaders to track whether they are meeting or their needs are being met by that particular path. But let's not lose sight that members need different things. So the consistent question around why is important, because as soon as we make them realize that they still have a gap and they still want to achieve something, that suddenly brings back some of that motivation that might have dwindled. The other things I just want to mention, and I'll allow anyone else to come in if they have something. Sometimes it's just a change of scenery. I mentioned this very briefly to Maud the other day. I was saying that, we meet online for everything. But when we think about our work environment, we, in most cases, meet on Teams. And I'm sure all of you have heard that Teams call sound. That sound, that ringtone, is becoming a depressive sound. So you can imagine, the whole day you're on Teams and you listen, you're in these meetings. Now you have to go to Toastmasters, and maybe it's a bit after hours, and it kind of feels like it's an extension of work. And sometimes people want to switch off. So even sometimes simple things of, let's change the platform that we use for Toastmasters meetings. That would actually diversify ever so little the experience of the members, right? And of course, where possible, if you are in the same town or in the same building, every now and then, maybe once a month, go back to that face-to-face meeting and see if that kind of juices things up. But we have to try and sort of change the scenery a bit, because I do believe that people do get a bit strained by online only. So think about those kind of ideas as well. They might sound simple, but they can have a huge impact in terms of how your members view the Toastmasters experience.
Hi, Lezola. Let me add something at this point. In addition to finding out your members' why, I think it would be a good idea, especially for corporate clubs, to also do something that we call in Toastmasters a member interest survey. If you're hearing about it for the first time, you can reach out to me. I will put one together uniquely for corporate clubs. It's a short survey asking your members, what is it that they're enjoying in the club, and what is it that we can do to improve on the experience that we give them? Because remember, Toastmasters is an experience. What can we do to improve the experience? You may find some of these other things that we're still going to touch on start creeping in. And if you're able to address them early, it's very likely that you can keep that member satisfied, because remember, one member is better or more valuable than trying to get two other members. So if you're keen to get a member interest survey, please reach out to me. I will draft one and put it together specifically for corporate clubs, or better yet, I will put one together for corporate clubs. I'll share it in a resource that we'll speak about towards the end, and conduct that, I would suggest, every quarter. So don't wait until membership renewals and then you say, oh guys, what are you interested in? After every 3 months, I would say run the survey. The beauty about it is you get to understand and know exactly what your members are thinking at the time. So they may tell you the time is not working. I'm tired of meeting online, or I'm wanting more opportunities to speak, or the reason why I joined is not being met. And then you're able to, as a leadership team, proactively manage that crisis, than for you to wait up until March, like we are now, and suddenly a member tells you, oh, I'm not renewing because I'm not motivated or my needs haven't been met. So just something to think about. If your club has never conducted a member interest survey, to do so, it definitely is a game changer, especially for corporate clubs. Lezola, back to you.
Thank you very much, Maud. So we talk about experience also, Toastmasters experience. And this is something also you have to really keep at the top of your mind from a leadership perspective, particularly at a corporate, because how is this meeting different from all the other meetings that you've been attending the entire day on the same platform? So there's a lot more demand for us to be creative. So one of the things, obviously, if I take back to 2015, we started a club on a Friday night. Some of you might have heard it. It's called TSN. And that club was interesting for a variety of reasons, but I'll mention 3. So the first thing, it met on a Friday night, and it was pretty unheard of at the time. And remember, this is face-to-face time. So everyone was like, who wants to meet on a Friday? You know, people want to go out to the movies and drinking. We said, no. If you're going to go out drinking anyway, we're going to meet at a place, at a restaurant where you could actually enjoy beverages. So we'll meet for an hour, and after that, it's a hangout, right? So that became quite an interesting thing. But further on that, we started inviting CEOs of companies to come and do speeches or guest speak. And so that did 2 things, right? It changed the dynamic. So it didn't seem like it's just a bunch of people going out to drink on a Friday night. It seemed like, all right, something's happening on a private night, and some serious people are agreeing to come and address these people. And so that kind of became a crowd puller. But I think more importantly, we started giving the CEOs feedback on their speeches, how they did in the same Toastmasters way. So that offered them a bit of a dynamic. They're a bit nervous in speaking in front of us, where in fact they've done this a million other times, except they've never had to get feedback. And so because they've never had to contend with this, it made them nervous in a good way. But what it did for the other members who are there or the other guests is to remind everyone that everyone is human and everyone grows through feedback. So those little things, as one of the few things we did, became quite an interesting dynamic as to an otherwise just a normal Toastmasters club. So thinking about your corporate, for example, one of the key things you have as a corporate is you've got important people within your corporate. And a lot of corporate people want access to people, at least to engage them, to be able to hear what they have to say. And whether we like it or not, corporate tend to have a culture where there is a form of positive association that people would view a club within a corporate. So one of the things we could look at is to actually not only invite some corporate leaders within your corporate and all that, but actually make it a culture that they're coming there to get some feedback from this club. That way, especially the kind of key feedback that you'll be giving to those corporate leaders and how valuable it is and how well structured it will be, it will change the perspective they have of Toastmasters. And they start to talk about it within corporate and start to say, you should join this. And that also increases the perception and the engagement of how people see something like a Toastmasters club. But it has to be dynamic, change it up a bit, always create a reason why someone is going to come and attend. Right? Of course, for the members that are already part of your club, they're like, oh, wow, that's an interesting person. I want to hear that person. But for other people who would otherwise not care about Toastmasters or maybe have never heard of Toastmasters, they might just see a poster or an email flyer saying, Laszlo Lapelle, the CEO of Russia, is speaking at what corporate Toastmasters club. And they're like, oh, I want to hear some of that information. And that's one way to get people coming in. The best way to retain is to keep people coming in. It's got a huge psychological impact even on the members, because when they see different people, they get encouraged. Once a club starts to shrink in size, even if there's 20 people, once they know each other, then it becomes too familiar to those members. And sometimes like, I'll skip it today. So keep those doors revolving, keep the guests coming in, and that does huge impact in terms of your retention strategy.
Lazola, if I can just add to that, it also prevents burnout. Because one of the challenges one of the leaders puts is that our team is so thin, the same people are taking up roles and they're not able to continue on their journey. So when you have a constant stream of new members, you avoid that situation from happening because there's new faces and everyone gets to experience it and everyone gets to continue on their journey. Because remember, leaders, you're a leader. You are a member first, and never forget that. We need to see you on the program. You cannot tell us, hey guys, deliver your speeches, and we've not heard from you. You cannot tell us, hey guys, renew your membership when you've not done that. So just bear that in mind as you chart a way forward. And like Lazola is saying, If you consider membership as an ongoing process and not just now in March, since we're renewing our membership, it's also going to lessen that load on you as a team, because suddenly you've got this big group of people. And also, like Mercia was saying, the club has become big. They can now consider multiplying because they've had that steady stream. But it's not going to just, you're not going to just wake up and the people are going to be there. You have to continuously work in it. Your marketing has to be really on point, and the onboarding that Lazola was speaking about as well. If your club is needing assistance with any of these processes, please reach out to us so that we can get, there's always people in Toastmasters who are open and willing to assist you. We can get someone from the Toastmasters Leadership Institute to come and assist you on how to do onboarding and how to get your members started on their journey, because the onboarding is also quite an important process. If a member, think about it at your company, there are some people on the call who work in human resources, and I know they'll understand what I'm talking about. When you have a new employee coming to the company, you don't just say to them, okay, here's your laptop, go, bye. You onboard them. You tell them about your processes in the company. You give them a laptop with a password. Everything's been sorted. They know where this is, that is. They know everything. And with our members, it's exactly the same. If you just bring them and say, okay, do your icebreaker, they're not going to know what's happening. And if that continues month after month after month, come March, come September, they tell you, oh, I didn't receive value. When maybe, just maybe, the onboarding wasn't done correctly and they don't understand where they need to go. They're new in the company, but no one's told them what they need to do. So just something, yet again, leaders to think about as we chart a way forward and we retain members on a continuous basis, not just every 6 months. I hope that's we've challenged you to think about membership retention in a different light. Lazola, we're almost out of time, but I certainly want us to speak about this burning challenge. And it's not unique to corporates, but corporates are feeling it the most at this time. I do not have time. I am so busy. How do we approach a member who has that challenge that we all have, not just as Toastmasters, but even as people? We don't have enough time, do we? Over to you, Leslie.
Yeah. Look, that is a very interesting question, right? So another thing is that, you know, I look at, so one of my kids is now in matric. The other one is, I don't know, somewhere in primary school. And it just seems like I just have less and less and less and less time. So one thing that I used to say, you know, from a long time ago is that when someone says to me they don't have the time, so the question is, you know, when are you going to have time, right? You not necessarily have to ask them, but to make them realize that you get busier in life. You don't get less busier. The older you get, the more busier you become, right? And so when you're going to look for a time where you have the time, you're going to get the time when you're 65 and your kids, you're retired and your kids are also married. And it's fine, it happens. There is a lady who joined Toastmasters when she was 68 and she had been invited when she was about 26, right? She just never had time. She was raising kids, right? So it happens. But recognize that it's not, you're not going to get the time. And then number two, the issue of time is not really, it's an issue of importance, right? So when someone says, I don't have time, what they're saying is that I don't see the value of the program right now, or the you know, there's a opportunity cost here. So when they trade off, they don't see the value of Toastmasters, which is fine. I mean, that's the honest of it. Not everyone will see the value all the time, but let's get to that point so that we say, all right, you don't see the value. Can I introduce you to more information? Or to say, like, right now, you're not necessarily then supposed to be part of this program, but you know the program is there, you'll come back. But the issue of time is generally a value discussion, right? Once you've put Toastmasters in top of importance, then you will have time for it. I've been a Toastmaster for, I don't know, like 15 years. And, you know, at sometimes in that journey, I would have a lot of time for Toastmasters, and sometimes I would have less time for Toastmasters. But I can admit it to myself, the difference is important. In some years, I would say, look, I don't think Toastmasters is that important for me right now. And I would degrade it in my list of priorities, and then I'll carry on other things that are more important. In some years, I'll say, hey, it's actually quite important because there's something I need to learn from it. So I'd increase it in the list of priorities, and then I'll do a lot more of that. But the older you get, the less time you have. It is what it is. So the issue here is priority, and that priority is linked directly to the value that you are getting from Toastmasters or the value you expect to get. And there's that difference there. If you're not getting the value you're looking for, then you decrease the priority of Toastmasters down the list. So when you engage your members, ask them again, back to that why. Why did you join? Are you clear about why, and are you meeting that why? And if a member is not meeting that why, then the priority of Toastmasters goes down. If they are meeting that why and they can link it to their own personal goals, then it naturally goes up. Then it's an issue of time. It's an issue of I'm getting something from this which I'm using where I need to be using it from. So time for me is a very, 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 very key thing that tells people, that tells me as a leader, there's an issue of value, and therefore the priority is going down. And so we need to find out, and in some cases, nothing we can do for that member because, it is what it is. But at least when we know not to bother them anymore, and then we can focus our energies elsewhere, right?
I love someone said in the chat box, and it's quite true, people make time for things that are important to them. So when a member comes to you and says to you, I do not have time, like Lazola says, they do have time. It is not a priority in their lives at that time. And we must learn as leaders not to take it personally. We can either, and that is why that member interest survey becomes really important, because on there, they will tell you exactly what it is you can do to improve. But don't just leave them at saying, okay, yeah, okay, no, you can go to another club. Find out from them, okay, great, you don't have time. What could we do to make that time available for you? Then you will find that it's maybe not a time challenge, it's a value, like Lazola was saying. But something else that you could consider, because remember, we're leaders from corporate clubs. We don't want people to just tell us that they're not getting value because of time. One of the things you could look at, leaders, is consider the length of your sessions. In Masterclass 2, when we spoke about creating wow sessions, Andrew spoke about the length of your learning and development sessions. Some corporates meet, or some corporate clubs meet 1 hour every week. You could also meet for 90 minutes every week. Some clubs decide that's a little bit too much. They meet for 2 hours every alternate week. There are some corporates who are a bit more flexible and want their members to enjoy the experience, and they allow it during working hours. Send out that member interest survey, and you could also find some very interesting information and insights from there, that maybe the time that you're hosting your learning and development sessions is not the right one for your club. Or maybe the length, they may say, oh, 2 hours is too long, 90 minutes would be better. I'm not saying overhaul your entire meeting arrangements or sessions arrangements for one person, but do look at those sessions. We do recommend, and Andrew would have in that session, anything more than 2 hours becomes a little bit much. We're still meeting online, we're sitting, and that can be a bit much. And also 2 hours away, can bring a challenge. And then someone tells you they don't have time, but maybe it's because 2 hours is too much time. So just look and consider looking at the length of your time. Another thing I've said to leaders before is, if you're from a closed corporate especially, consider adding Toastmasters and sending a calendar invite to your colleagues so that it's in their diaries. Lazola is the same, and I know I am too. If it's not in my diary, leaders, it does not happen. I do not take invitations on WhatsApp. I may say yes, but then I'll ask you to follow it up with the calendar invite. When it's in my diary, I know that it's there, and I make time for it because it's a priority. So if you're from especially a closed corporate where it's just your colleagues, it's easier. If you're from an open corporate, you can add your colleagues who are in the company, and then the ones who are not part of the company, you can just manually add them. I'm almost certain that it is you are able to do that. I've also written something here, leaders, before we wrap up. Remember that your colleagues are part of the club, especially if you're from a closed corporate, because they are employees of the company. When they leave the company, their membership with your club comes to an end. But I want to encourage you not to just let them go. Conduct what we call in Toastmasters a member exit interview. When you leave the company, I'm hoping at your company, human resources will say, can we have an exit interview and find out about their experience whilst they were in the club. What worked? What could we do better? The beauty about those people is they've got nothing to lose, so they're going to be very honest with you and tell you exactly what they enjoyed and what you could do better. And that's stuff that you can, as a leadership team, take forward to make your membership experience better. But don't take it personally. When someone leaves the company, their membership comes to an end. Do that exit interview, but also recommend another club to them. Tell them they will not be able to be part of your corporate club, but recommend a community club to them in their area, or now that we're online, any club that you suggest, a few clubs that they could visit so that they can continue on their journey, regardless of them being employees of the company or not. Lazola, we've got 3 minutes, so I'm going to give you the virtual stage as our facilitator to close us off before we sign out. Back to you.
I want to mention something very important for all the leaders here. So we spoke a lot about the why, but also remember there's a why you agreed to become a leader of a Toastmasters club, and that's quite key. I've had a lot of different roles across Toastmasters. I think the first one I was treasurer, and I was treasurer because they just said no one is raising their hand. Do you do it? I said yes. And so it went on. And became president, I became area director, and so it went on. But one thing I noticed in all those roles, and some of them were more difficult than others, and it's not necessarily the role itself, it's the reason why I took it up and I didn't actually have one. So when you don't know why you took up the role, you miss an opportunity to learn for yourself. And it's not only when I started knowing that the role I'm taking up has a lot to do with me learning something than it is to do with whether I am able to retain a member or not. And so that's the question I have to answer for myself. And so make the role a challenge for you in a positive way, that this is what I'm learning, this is what I'm going to apply it in life. And the beauty also is that there are things such as I did a high performance leadership when I was a division director. I used that exercise or that program as a way to run that leadership role as a project. And in that way, I learned how to actually organize those teams and use that beyond that role. And what is it that I stand to learn, I stand to gain? And when you can answer that and you can do that well, everything else becomes a beautiful challenge, whether you get it right or not, because you've got something to take back at the end of the road to say, right, I now know this about myself and I know these gaps and this is what I can do to close them. It's quite important. Otherwise, it's going to seem hard. And when it seems hard, we just want to quit. Thank you very much for the time. I hope you learned one thing or two from what I've had to share. And thank you very much, Omar, for the invite.
Lazola, you have shared so much. I was taking down notes. I'm not from a corporate club, but I feel like I'm from one. Leaders, I hope you found this session insightful. As I always say, the conversation doesn't end here. We have these sessions on the 4th Monday of each month. They're very power-packed. They're really short too. So I hope you found it useful. But this conversation is going to continue in our dedicated WhatsApp group. On the topic of WhatsApp group, in the chat box, I have dropped 2 links for your attention. The first one is my contact number. Should you be experiencing a challenge either with your corporate club or anything relating to your journey as a Toastmaster or a leader within a corporate club, please reach out to me. When you click on that first number, it will redirect you straight to my WhatsApp. You do not have to save my number. The second one is the community that I was talking about. It's called the Corporate Leadership Network, which is the name of this program. In that group, we continue this conversation because we won't have enough time to do it here. If you've got questions, if you've got challenges, if you want to share what your club is doing to retain members, please, if you're not a member of the group, join it. Or if you're having a challenge clicking on there, save my number at least, and then you can reach out to me and I'll be able to send that link to you. It's been an amazing session. It's always a pleasure hosting you here on the Corporate Leadership Network. We meet on the 4th Monday of each month. We will do the same in April on a different topic relating to corporate clubs. Until then, leaders, please take care, be safe. The conversation will continue on our WhatsApp group. Have yourselves a great day further. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cheers.
Thank you so much, leaders. Thank you.